Now it's time to get deeper into parameters and its types. So earlier we have learned how to declare a function and how it accepts a parameter. But there are different ways to accept a parameter. In the diagram you can see parameter are of two types, optional and required. By the name only you can understand that if it's required, then you have to pass the argument or else it will show an error. And when it's optional, then there are also three types of optional, that is positional, named, and default. So we will understand each and every one step by step. So let's get started. First, we will understand what are required parameters. Let's bring our code editor and create a function name print name. And suppose it accepts arguments like string name1, string name2, string name3. Okay, and I will just print out the names like name1 and name2 and name3. Okay, we have our function ready. Now it's time to call it like print name. But if we directly call it like this, it will show an error because it's a required parameter type, which means we have to send a value. I will just send Hulk, Iron Man, and Spider Man. Let's see the output. Okay, you can see all those are printed. So it's very basic, and we have done this earlier as well. But you have to understand what it is called, and it is called a required parameter type. Now, the second type is optional, and within optional, we will be understanding what is a positional optional parameter. So, to make a parameter optional, we use this brackets, square brackets. And positional means this Hulk will be in the first position, that is string name 1. This Iron Man will be in the second position, that is name 2. Because this is the order how it's written here. See, if I change the order like Spider-Man here and Iron Man here, so this output will be changed because it is positionally decided which one is where. Now, if I want to make this name 3 optional, that is, I don't want it, if it's not sent, then also it's fine. Like this, we have to use this square bracket. But there is showing an error because it's showing that the parameter name3 can't have a value of null because of its type, and its type is string. So in the latest version, Dart has introduced something called null safety, which simply means if any variable variable or function can return or accept a value which can be null. In that case, in that case, you have to declare that data type as nullable, which can be done with the expression question mark, which simply means if I have this string and I just insert a question mark here, that means this value, this variable can contain a null as well, which in our case is true. Now, if I run the program, see Hulk and Spider-Man and null, because we haven't passed the value. So here this concept is very also very important, because when you are asking a value from the user, you many of the fields may be optional. Suppose what interest, or what age you are, or how much money you earn. The user may or may not want to fill those forms. So in that case, you can have those variables as optional. And just remember, this null safety is recently introduced. So if you are watching any video tutorial, which is suppose 6 months or 1 year back, so there this question mark is not being introduced. So you might get some errors. And here down you can see the null safety is on, because it's default in the Flutter framework. So I this is optional parameter type. Now I have explained everything here. Now the next is named parameter. Now this is little interesting. Earlier we were just using positional parameters, because there were very few arguments which we were passing. But suppose we have lot of parameters, then it will be very difficult to remember their positions. That is, in the one position its name, in the second position its age, in the third position its city. It's not always feasible to remember all those. So in that case we use name parameters, and here we will be using curly braces. Earlier, we learned to use square braces, but now we will use curly braces. And simply, I will create a new function which will be named parameter. Okay, I will write int find volume, and then in the parameter I will simply write curly braces and then int length, int breadth, and I will write print. I will not print here, I will just return length into breadth, and if I want height as well, because it's the volume, I will declare another parameter of height. Now you might be seeing some errors. I will explain you what's that, because here the parameter becomes optional by default. So you have to use null safety within the curly braces. So in name parameters, the values becomes optional. That is, it can be null. So we have to use null safety, which is very simple. Is simply use question mark, question mark, question mark. But if you are using the question mark, here it will show some errors as well, because we cannot do calculation, we cannot do this kind of calculations here if the value is a null. So in that case, I will just check. Let's try and check if length not equal, if length equal to null and breadth equal to null and height equal to null, then return. Again, there is error. This kind of situations you will encounter a lot while programming. So for this solution, you can do one thing. Either you can just make it optional, but sorry, make it named, but with required keyword. That is, this function has to return a value, because it's a very simple concept. If we are doing any kind of mathematical calculation, the value has to be provided. So the required thing, make sure the value is being sent. Now, if I call the function like find volume, I cannot just pass value like this, because it's a name parameter. It has its own name, which we can see here. Height can be 5 comma, breadth can be 5, and length can be 5. So if you notice here, it, since it's not positional, I can call the value at any it's like any position, because first I have called height, but there it was length. Then I call breadth, it was breadth, but last it was height, but I call length. Because it's a name parameter, we don't have to remember the positions of the arguments. And simply I will print volume value. Sorry, volume spelling, volume. I will run and say 125. So since it's a named argument, There are we can call it by these names, and it's much more easier because it can be name, age, salary. We don't have to remember anything. Now it's time to use the final parameter, which is the default parameter. Now, in the same case, I'll just remove all this and I will write default parameter. In the same case, if it was not required, if it was like this, in that case, default means if the value is not being sent, then we will have this value instead. It's like length will be 1, height will be this, and breadth will be 4. So here, if I suppose forget to send length, then also it will the length will be 1. That is, let's make it 2 so that the calculation you will see clearly. 2 into 5, 10. 10 into 5, 50. See, I haven't sent the parameter length, but it was, since it was default there, you can, the program doesn't get crashed. A good example is void profile, and also remember we can use positional and name parameter both at the same time, like string host is equal to guest. Here will be default parameter, and I will just simply print workshop is conducted by host. Okay, now if I call the function, now please concentrate because the first parameter is a positional. So I cannot just say workshop and this. No, it will show an error. So it's a positional. I have to write Flutter. And second one is named. So host will be suppose Google. And now let's run the program. See, Flutter is conducted by Google. But suppose if I forget or don't want to give the value or parameter of host, then it will not show any error, and it will simply become Flutter is conducted by guest. So if you see an example of Facebook, you will understand there will be welcome guest, and after you log in, there will be welcome your username. This is a very basic example of using default parameters. So I hope you have understood the concept deeply. There, this is all what is required for the functions concept. So in the next video, we will learn some more concepts of OOPS, that is classes and object. See you in the next video.